The world, I think, is from now on going to see growth, development, and also much better changes, both in terms of economic development, people development, and sustainability. As we have seen that from the past, what we have been through in last few years, the world leaders as well as the corporate leaders have really learned their lessons very well. And we can see the consequences of that in the new regime of structural change, systemic change, regulatory changes to manage the corporate world with much better risk and control framework. Coming to India, this is the most interesting year as we are now headed for elections. And all said and done, I'm very optimistic about the growth opportunity that India presents today. And whoever comes to lead India as a polity will definitely have a very grounded, very well thought through, and very, very well planned strategic policy changes and structural changes to drive growth in India. Because that is something which is now inevitable and it has to happen. And this brings the corporate world into a very, very interesting phase, and particularly from the leadership perspective. The leaders are today going to be very well equipped, not only with the competence, but also with the supporting structures and policies and systems which is being provided from the macro perspective to take their business, to take their industry, to take their firms to growth phase, revenue generating phase. And as I see it, that while competence is a given, the focus for the leaders have to be on building character. If competence is not supported by the right values, then a right culture is not built. Therefore, it is imperative that the leaders, having built very high degree of competence, and now have to align that with the values so that they come out with great character. Else, we can lose everything that we have generated as wealth in a jiffy. The competence that the future leaders in general would need would be beginning from agility, which is the ability to deal with the ambiguous situation, the uncertainty, with a lot of sense of urgency. The second area would be in terms of developing the T caliber, which is acquiring the width, the breadth, as well as depth. Gone are the days where we could say either or, either width or depth. The paradigm has now shifted to and. We need width and depth. Moving on, I see leadership to be redefined and rebased as followership. And I strongly believe that if we reposition and redefine leadership as followership, the whole mindset change will happen. And what do I mean by that? Followership of following the clients and the customers' need, following what the environment is asking for, following what the employees are seeking, following what the market is demanding. And if leadership develops those kind of followership competence, they will automatically exhibit humility, less of ego, inclusivity, and most importantly, a character of not just challenging the team, the corporate world, but supporting them, being at the back like a rock. And that character of challenging, coupled with support and integrity, would really, really mean a lot for the development of future leaders. The other thing that one needs to understand, particularly at leadership level, is that change is no more a constant. The technology, as it has changed in last few decades, has brought us to a situation where the only constant is the rate or the pace of change, which is currently at exponential level. And therefore, the leaders will require to build the capability of dealing with this change. And one of the big changes that will happen is the mix of employees from various generations, which is, you have the baby boomers probably now at the helm of affairs, but very soon would be leaving the corporate world. You have Generation X, Generation Y, you have millennials, and each of these generations bring tremendous amount of their own strength. And a true leader, and a leader particularly with the competence and character, would be able to leverage and tap into the strengths of all of these generations. And that will be the defining success point. And when I talk about success, I want to bring in my insight that success is temporary. Celebrating success, rewarding and recognizing success, all that is very fine. But when a success becomes significant, its impact is long-term. And therefore, the future leaders would need to define success as significant contributions and not just one-off, one-time, temporary, successful ventures being led by their team members. It has to be significant. And we need to put metrics around that. And the good leaders will be the ones who will be able to put those metrics to measure the success, which will eventually be significant for the employees, for the firm, for the community, for the country at large, and for generation of wealth for the entire world. The strategies for developing these competencies and build a strong character in leaders, I think the first step would be to be able to challenge their mindset. And to do so, we need to make sure that they know that their performance and their potential is equal, except when internally in their mind they feel less capable, or they feel overconfident, or they feel blocked. So if that mindset is very clearly made to be understood by them, that I can deliver with my full potential if I don't allow these things to come in the way when I'm contributing to the success of the organization. And this happens by first creating an environment for them where they are given challenging jobs, stretch assignments. And that's the key for developing leaders. And this is the key strategy that we should adopt when we are talking of developing leaders. Put them through challenges. Put them through assignments where they have a desire, but they feel they may not be completely ready for it. But they want to be there, they aspire to be there. Give it ahead of time, and then help them, facilitate by providing them the right kind of support. Now, if that happens, then slowly these leaders will start performing at their full potential. And the second point is, we must start building accountability in the organization at all levels. When we talk of leadership, we usually think of the heads of the department or the executive management committee or so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is that we forget that even at the organization, at the middle and at the bottom level of the organization, the individual who is carrying out any job is fundamentally the leader of that particular job. And therefore, we shouldn't let them off and build that accountability there. So the biggest strategy that I would like to talk about is to start getting focused from bottoms up and not from top down, and build these kind of competencies of agile thinking, of curious mind, of learning, supported with the accountability on them to go and learn things, to deliver and perform better. We have put a great strategy in place. The second piece is, how do we bring about the understanding in developing leaders of the various contexts in which they are performing? More often than not, the content is very much into focus for leadership inputs, development, and opportunities. But the context is kept aside. We have to be mindful of the geographical context, the cultural context, the product, the business context, the maturity at which the business currently is. That is also a context. And keeping all this context in mind, we should then strategize of how to bring forward the leaders to experience different contexts, and within those different contexts, how do they shape up their contribution, their delivery, their content of performance. And that environment has to be provided to them. And last but not the least is creating an atmosphere of making them understand that there is a method in place which is perform or perish. We must at all times brief the person going through any leadership developmental assignment, whether it is a half-a-day conference or a program run in any international big business school or any conference, whether in India, wherever. It is our responsibility to brief them that there is an expected outcome, a return on that investment that the organization is making, that they should be aware of. So one of the very key tools for developing leaders would be to provide an opportunity for the leaders to engage in a very disciplined entrepreneurship, which means that they should have and get an opportunity more often to go beyond their own boundaries. For example, if somebody is a customer relationship management person, he or she should get an opportunity to go to the other side of the organization and look at vendor relationship. If somebody is developing products on one side, he should get an opportunity of also knowing how the pricing of the product is happening after all the cost inputs come through. And this is a kind of disciplined entrepreneurship environment that you create for them. And this should be completely an open-ended opportunity for them to build a very, very successful opportunity into a very significant contribution. We need to give them opportunity, measure that, And that's the only way where we can always ensure that we are building a very strong character in leaders along with the given competencies and driving them towards more of significant contributions and not just following one success or the other.